Let me start with a simple question. If working hard automatically made people rich, wouldn't construction workers, nurses, factory workers, and delivery drivers be millionaires by now? Most people know someone who works incredibly hard. They wake up early, put in long hours, rarely take vacations, and spend decades doing everything society told them to do. Yet, many of them are still living paycheck to paycheck. That's the uncomfortable truth that hits you right in the face when you read The Millionaire Fastlane. The author, MJ DeMarco, starts with challenging an idea that most of us have accepted without questioning. It's the traditional life plan we've been taught since childhood. Go to school, get good grades, find a stable job, save money, invest regularly, work for 40 years, retire at 65, then hopefully enjoy life. Sounds familiar, right? Most of us grew up hearing some version of that advice. Parents repeat it, teachers repeat it, financial experts repeat it. Society treats it like a law of nature. But DeMarco asks a bold question. What if this entire plan is broken? What if the path that is supposed to make you wealthy actually guarantees that you'll spend most of your life working for someone else? Think about it. Let's say you're 25 years old. You get a decent job and start saving money. Maybe you invest a few $100s every month. Maybe your investments grow at a reasonable rate. Sounds smart. But when do you actually become wealthy? At 50? At 60? At 65? The problem isn't that the math is wrong. The problem is the timeline. You're sacrificing the best decades of your life for a reward that may not arrive until you're old. That's why DeMarco calls this the slow lane. You're moving toward wealth, but you're moving painfully slowly. Now, before anyone gets angry, this doesn't mean saving money is bad. It doesn't mean investing is bad. Both are important. The issue is relying on those things as your primary strategy for becoming rich. Imagine you're trying to fill a swimming pool using a garden hose. Sure, the pool will eventually fill up, but it might take forever. That's how most people approach wealth. They're trying to create extraordinary results with an ordinary income. And that's incredibly difficult. Here's another uncomfortable reality. Most people focus almost entirely on income from labor. In other words, they sell their time. You work 8 hours, you get paid for 8 hours. You work 10 hours, you get paid for 10 hours. No work, no pay. The relationship is direct. Your income is tied to your time. At first, this seems perfectly normal because almost everyone around you lives this way. But think about the limitation. There are only 24 hours in a day. You can't double your income forever by working more hours. Eventually, you hit a ceiling. Your energy runs out, your schedule fills up, your health suffers. And even if you become highly skilled, you're still trapped by time. That's when many people realize they're running on a treadmill. They're moving constantly, but not getting much closer to freedom. Now compare that to someone who owns a business system. Imagine creating something once and selling it thousands of times. A software product, an online course, a mobile app, a book, a platform, a business with employees. The key difference is that income is no longer directly connected to every hour you personally work. Your effort can scale. That's a completely different game. DeMarco says that wealthy people often think differently because they understand this distinction. Average earners focus on earning more. Wealth builders focus on creating systems that can earn without requiring their constant presence. That doesn't mean it's easy. In fact, it's usually much harder at the beginning. Building something scalable often requires more risk, more uncertainty, and more responsibility. but it also creates opportunities that a traditional job simply can't provide. One of the biggest traps people fall into is believing that consumption is a sign of wealth. We've all seen it. Someone gets a raise, they buy a bigger car, a bigger house, more expensive clothes, a newer phone, a luxury vacation. Their income goes up, but their expenses rise right alongside it. From the outside, they look successful. Inside, they're still financially stressed. This is what DeMarco calls living rich instead of being rich. There's a huge difference. Looking wealthy and actually building wealth are not the same thing. Many people spend years chasing appearances while neglecting the assets that could genuinely change their financial future. The world is full of people driving expensive cars they can't afford, living in houses that stretch their budgets, buying things to impress people who aren't paying their bills. And every dollar spent maintaining that image is a dollar that can be invested into creating future opportunities. The wealth game isn't won by looking rich. It's won by owning things that produce value. That's a lesson many people learn far too late. Another powerful idea from the book is that society often encourages comfort over opportunity. Most people want certainty, a predictable paycheck, a predictable routine, a predictable future. And that's understandable. Uncertainty is scary. Starting a business is scary. Launching a product is scary. Taking responsibility for your own success is scary. But comfort has a hidden cost. The more attached you become to security, the harder it becomes to pursue extraordinary outcomes. You start protecting what you have instead of building what you want. You avoid risks, you delay action, you wait for the perfect moment. Years pass, then decades pass, and one day you realize your biggest risk wasn't taking a chance. It was never taking one. That's the wake-up call at the heart of the Millionaire Fastlane. The book isn't promising overnight riches. It's not telling you to quit your job tomorrow. It's not selling some magical shortcut. What it's really doing is forcing you to question assumptions. Are you following a path because it's effective or because everyone else is following it? Are you building assets or are you only earning income? Are you creating value at scale or are you simply trading time for money? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they matter, because wealth isn't just about money, it's about freedom. Freedom to choose how you spend your time, freedom to decide where you live, freedom to work on projects you actually care about, freedom to help the people you love. And according to MJ DeMarco, that kind of freedom rarely comes from blindly following the script society hands you. It comes from understanding how wealth is really created and having the courage to pursue a different road when necessary. And that's where the journey begins. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the biggest trap that keeps millions of people stuck in the slow lane, the mindset that turns hard-working people into lifelong employees. We talked about the traditional path most people follow and why MJ DeMarco believes it rarely leads to real financial freedom. Now, let's talk about something even more important. The reason most people stay stuck isn't because they're lazy. It's not because they're stupid, and it's definitely not because they don't work hard enough. The real problem is much deeper. It's a mindset, a way of thinking that quietly shapes every financial decision they make. And the scary part? Most people don't even realize they have it. DeMarco calls this the slow lane mindset. It's the belief that wealth comes mainly from working harder, saving more, and waiting longer. At first glance, that sounds reasonable. After all, that's what we've been taught our entire lives. Work hard, be responsible, save money, invest consistently, stay patient, eventually you'll be rewarded. The problem is that this approach trains people to think like employees forever. Think about how most jobs work. You show up, you follow instructions, you complete tasks, you receive a paycheck. The system rewards obedience and consistency. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem starts when people assume this same formula applies to wealth creation. Because wealth doesn't always reward effort, it rewards value. Those two things are not the same. Let's say person A spends 10 hours digging a hole and filling it back up. That's hard work. Nobody can deny it. Now, imagine person B spends 2 hours creating a simple software tool that helps 10,000 people save time every day. Who creates more value? Obviously, person B, yet person A worked much harder. This is one of the biggest mental shifts in the Millionaire Fastlane. The marketplace doesn't care how hard you work, it cares how much value you create. That's why some people make millions while working fewer hours than others. They're solving bigger problems, helping more people, creating systems that scale. Meanwhile, many hard-working people stay trapped because they're measuring effort instead of impact. Another slow lane trap is the obsession with job security. Most people spend years searching for a safe career, a stable company, a predictable paycheck, a reliable future. That sounds smart, but DeMarco argues that job security is often an illusion. Think about it. How many people have been laid off from jobs they thought were secure? How many companies have disappeared? How many industries have been transformed by technology? The world changes fast. What's considered stable today may not exist tomorrow. When your entire financial life depends on one employer, you're placing enormous trust in something you don't control. The company controls your salary, the company controls promotions, the company controls layoffs, the company controls opportunities. You might feel secure, but your future is still sitting in someone else's hands. That's not true control. And control is one of the themes DeMarco comes back to again and again. Wealthy people tend to seek control over their income. Average people often seek security from someone else's system. There's a huge difference. Now, let's talk about another dangerous habit, waiting. People love waiting. I'll start my business when I have more money. I'll invest when the market looks better. I'll learn that skill when life gets less busy. I'll chase my dream after the kids grow up. I'll take action next year. The waiting never ends. 1 year becomes 5, 5 becomes 10. Before they know it, decades have passed. The truth is that perfect conditions rarely exist. Successful people aren't people who waited until everything was certain. They're people who moved despite uncertainty. They took imperfect action. They learned as they went, and they accepted that mistakes were part of the process. Meanwhile, many intelligent people stay stuck because they're constantly preparing instead of doing. They read books, watch videos, listen to podcasts, take courses, gather information, make plans, then make more plans and more plans. At some point, preparation becomes procrastination wearing a disguise. Knowledge is valuable, but knowledge without action creates nothing. One of the harshest truths in the book is that the marketplace doesn't pay people for what they know, it pays people for what they do. You can know everything about business and never make a dollar. You can know everything about fitness and stay unhealthy. You can know everything about investing and never invest. Results come from execution, not information. Another mindset that keeps people trapped is the belief that rich people are somehow different. Maybe you've heard comments like these. They got lucky. They had connections. They were born into money. They were in the right place at the right time. Sure, those things sometimes happen. Luck exists. Connections matter. Advantages are real. But using those explanations for every successful person becomes dangerous. Why? Because it removes responsibility. If wealth only happens because of luck, then there's nothing for you to learn, nothing for you to improve, nothing for you to change. It's easier to believe successful people are special than to examine your own choices. DeMarco argues that many wealthy people simply understand value creation better than everyone else. They identify problems, they solve problems, and they get rewarded accordingly. That's not magic, that's economics. Here's another Slowlane belief. My expenses will stay under control once I earn more. Unfortunately, life doesn't usually work that way. When income rises, lifestyle often rises too. A bigger apartment, a newer car, more subscriptions, more dining out, more monthly payments. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it quietly destroys financial progress. Many people earn twice as much they did 10 years ago, yet feel no richer. Why? Because their spending increased right alongside their income. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, the bucket never fills. The slow lane mindset teaches people to focus on earning more so they can spend more. The fast lane mindset focuses on building assets that generate future income. That's a completely different objective. One creates temporary comfort, the other creates long-term freedom. The hardest part is that the slow lane often feels normal. Everyone around you may be following it. Friends, coworkers, family members, neighbors. The majority of people are doing the same thing. And when everybody follows the same path, questioning it can feel uncomfortable. But popularity doesn't guarantee effectiveness. If most people aren't financially free, then copying most people's financial strategy may not be the smartest move. That's one of the most powerful messages in this book. You don't get extraordinary results by thinking exactly like everyone else. You have to start asking different questions. Different questions lead to different actions, and different actions lead to different outcomes. The moment you stop seeing yourself as someone who simply earns money and start seeing yourself as someone who creates value, your perspective begins to change. You stop asking, how can I get a raise, and start asking, how can I solve a bigger problem? You stop asking, how can I work more hours, and start asking, how can I create something that works without me? That shift may seem small, but according to MJ DeMarco, it's the difference between spending your life running on a treadmill and building a vehicle that can actually take you somewhere. And once that mindset changes, the next question becomes obvious. If the slow lane is the wrong vehicle, what does the fast lane actually look like? That's exactly what we'll explore next. By now, you might be wondering, if the slow lane isn't the answer, then what exactly is the fast lane? When people first hear the word fast lane, they often misunderstand it. They think it means getting rich overnight, winning the lottery, buying meme stocks, finding some secret trick on the internet, or making millions without working. That's not what MJ DeMarco is talking about. In fact, one of the biggest surprises in the Millionaire Fastlane is that the fast lane isn't about avoiding work. It's about doing the right kind of work. Most people spend their lives trying to earn more money. Fast laners spend their lives trying to build more value. That sounds simple, but it changes everything. Let's look at a basic example. Imagine two people. The first person works as a consultant. They're highly skilled and earn $150 per hour. That's impressive. Most people would consider that a great income. But there's still a problem. Every dollar depends on their time. If they stop working, the income stops too. Now, imagine another person creates a software tool that businesses use every month. The software solves a real problem. 1,000 companies subscribe, then 10,000, then 50,000. Suddenly, the creator's income is no longer tied directly to their daily hours. The system continues generating value, and because it generates value, it generates income. That's the core idea behind the fast lane. Build systems instead of jobs. Create assets instead of paychecks. Own instead of rent. The wealthy understand something most people overlook. Income is important. Ownership is transformational. Think about some of the richest people in the world. Most of them didn't become wealthy because they had the highest salaries. They became wealthy because they owned businesses, products, intellectual property, platforms, or investments. Ownership allows growth beyond personal effort, and that's where true leverage begins. Leverage is one of the most powerful concepts in the entire book. Without leverage, your earning potential is limited. With leverage, your results can expand dramatically. Let's say you open a small coffee shop. You personally serve every customer. Your business grows, but eventually you reach your limit. There's only so much coffee you can make yourself. Now, imagine you create a coffee brand instead. Your products are sold online. Retail stores carry them. Distributors move them across the country. Thousands of customers buy your products every day. Same industry, completely different scale. That's leverage. The fast lane isn't about working less. It's about making each hour of work produce bigger results. Another major difference is how fast laners view problems. Most people try to avoid problems. They complain about them, they get frustrated by them, they wish they would disappear. Fast laners see something different. They see opportunity. Every problem in society represents potential value. Traffic congestion? Someone creates a navigation app. Communication difficulties? Someone builds a messaging platform. Slow transportation? Someone develops a better service. People pay for solutions. The bigger the problem you solve, the bigger the opportunity often becomes. That's why wealth creation isn't really about money. It's about service. Money follows value. Value follows solutions. Solutions follow problems. Once you understand that chain, you start looking at the world differently. Instead of asking, how can I make money, you start asking, what problem can I solve? That single question can completely change your future. One thing DeMarco emphasizes repeatedly is scale. Scale matters because there are limits to individual effort. Let's say you mow lawns. You can only mow so many lawns each week. Even if you're excellent, your growth eventually slows. Now imagine you create software that helps landscaping companies manage scheduling. Suddenly, your solution can serve thousands of businesses. The amount of value you can create becomes much larger, and larger value creation often leads to larger financial rewards. That's why fast laners constantly think about reach. How many people can benefit? How many customers can be served? How many users can be helped? How many problems can be solved? The answers determine potential scale. Another characteristic of the fast lane is control. Most employees have limited control over their income. The company decides raises. The company decides promotions. The company decides budgets. The company decides direction. Even exceptional employees operate within boundaries they don't control. Fast laners seek ownership because ownership provides control. Of course, control comes with responsibility. When you own something, there's nobody else to blame. If sales fall, it's your problem. If customers leave, it's your problem. If mistakes happen, they're your responsibility. Many people want freedom but avoid responsibility. Unfortunately, those two things rarely separate. Greater freedom usually requires greater responsibility. That's one reason why the fast lane isn't easy. The rewards can be enormous, but so can the challenges. There will be uncertainty, there will be setbacks, there will be failures, and that's perfectly normal. One of the biggest myths about successful entrepreneurs is that they always knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't. Most successful businesses started with mistakes. Products failed, ideas flopped, marketing campaigns bombed, money was lost, lessons were learned. The difference is that fast laners treat failure as feedback. Most people see failure as a stop sign. Fast laners see it as a course correction. That's a huge distinction. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. Nobody expects perfection on the first attempt. You wobble, you fall, you get back up. Eventually, you learn balance. Business often works the same way. The people who succeed aren't necessarily the smartest. They're often the people who stay in the game long enough to improve. Another major fast lane principle is speed. Not speed in getting rich, speed in learning, speed in adapting, speed in executing. The marketplace changes constantly. Technology evolves, consumer behavior shifts, new opportunities appear, old opportunities disappear. Fast laners move quickly because waiting can be expensive. While others spend years analyzing possibilities, fast laners test ideas. They gather real-world feedback. They adjust. They improve. Action creates information. Thinking alone rarely does. This doesn't mean being reckless. It means understanding that progress comes from movement. Many people remain stuck because they're waiting for certainty. Fast laners understand that certainty often arrives after action, not before it. Perhaps the most inspiring idea in this part of the book is that wealth isn't reserved for a special group of people. You don't need celebrity status. You don't need a genius IQ. You don't need wealthy parents. You don't need perfect timing. What you do need is the willingness to create value at scale, the willingness to solve problems, the willingness to take responsibility, the willingness to think differently from the crowd. That's what separates the fast lane from the slow lane. One path focuses on earning, the other focuses on creating. One path depends heavily on time, the other seeks leverage. One path waits decades for freedom, the other actively builds systems designed to accelerate freedom. And once you understand how the fast lane works, the next question becomes even more important. How do you know whether a business opportunity is actually capable of creating wealth? According to MJ DeMarco, there are 5 critical rules that separate powerful opportunities from dead ends. Those rules are the foundation of everything that comes next. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. Build a business, create value, solve problems, scale. Sounds great. But here's the problem. Not every business creates wealth. Not every opportunity leads to freedom, and not every entrepreneur ends up in the fast lane. In fact, many people spend years building businesses that trap them just like a job. They become self-employed instead of truly free. They're working longer hours than before, taking on more stress than before, making money but still stuck. That's why MJ DeMarco introduces one of the most important concepts in the entire book, the 5 fast lane commandments. Think of these as filters. Before investing years of your life into an opportunity, run it through these tests. If it fails most of them, it's probably not a true fast lane business. Let's break them down one by one. Commandment number 1, need. This is the biggest one. The marketplace rewards solutions, not wishes, not dreams, not personal passions alone. Solutions. One of the most common mistakes people make is starting with themselves. They ask, what do I want? What sounds fun? What would I enjoy doing? Those questions aren't completely wrong, but they're incomplete. The better question is, what do people need? Because people pay for solutions. Nobody buys a drill because they love drills. They buy it because they need a hole. Nobody pays for painkillers because they're exciting. They buy them because they're in pain. Nobody pays for a taxi because they love sitting in traffic. They pay because they need transportation. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. That's why some businesses grow rapidly while others struggle. One is solving an important problem. The other is hoping customers care. The marketplace doesn't reward effort. It rewards usefulness. If you remember only one thing from this chapter, Remember that. Commandment number 2, entry. Most people think low barriers are a good thing. DeMarco says the opposite. If anybody can do it, competition becomes brutal. Think about it. Imagine opening a generic coffee shop in a crowded neighborhood. How many competitors already exist? Probably dozens. What makes yours different? Why should customers choose you? Now compare that to creating a specialized product, unique technology, or expertise that's difficult to copy. The harder it is to enter a market, the fewer competitors you'll face. That's why wealthy entrepreneurs spend years developing skills, knowledge, systems, and advantages. They're building barriers. They're making competition harder. The irony is that most people run toward easy opportunities, and because everybody runs toward them, they become crowded and less profitable. Sometimes the harder path produces better rewards. Commandment number 4, control. This one surprises a lot of people. DeMarco argues that if you don't control the business, you don't control your future. Think about creators who build entire careers on a social media platform. Everything looks amazing. Thousands of followers, millions of views, steady income. Then one day the algorithm changes, reach collapses, revenue disappears. Suddenly someone else is controlling their business. The same thing happens in other industries. Maybe a company relies on one major customer. Maybe a seller depends entirely on a marketplace. Maybe a business depends on a single supplier. Whenever another party can significantly impact your income, your control decreases, and less control means more risk. Fastlaners seek ownership and influence over the things that generate their income. The more control you have, the more secure your future becomes. Control doesn't eliminate risk, but it puts more of the steering wheel in your hands. Commandment number 5, time. This commandment may be the most important of all. Most people accidentally build businesses that own them. Instead of creating freedom, they create another job. The business cannot function without them. They answer every email, handle every customer, solve every problem, approve every decision. If they leave for a week, everything falls apart. That's not freedom, that's dependency. A true fast-lane business should eventually become less dependent on your direct involvement. The goal isn't to work forever. The goal is to create systems. Systems allow value creation even when you're not personally present. Think about your favorite streaming service. Movies continue being watched while the founders sleep. Think about software companies. Customers continue subscribing while employees are on vacation. Think about authors. Books continue selling years after they were written. The ability to separate income from constant labor is one of the defining characteristics of wealth. Your time is finite. Systems are scalable. That's why the fast lane focuses so heavily on creating assets instead of simply creating work. Putting it all together. Now let's imagine 2 opportunities. Opportunity A, a business with low demand, intense competition, little control, limited scale, and total dependence on your daily effort. Opportunity B, a business solving a real problem, protected by expertise, controlled by its owner, capable of reaching thousands of customers, and supported by systems. Which one sounds more likely to create freedom? The answer is obvious, yet many people spend years pursuing opportunity A because they're excited about the idea. The 5 commandments force you to look beyond excitement. They force you to think strategically. That's what separates business owners from wealth builders. Wealth isn't created by being busy, it isn't created by working endless hours, and it isn't created by chasing every opportunity that appears. It's created by building something that satisfies these fundamental principles. The stronger your business scores in need, entry, control, scale, and time, the closer you move toward true financial freedom. And once you understand these commandments, another realization becomes impossible to ignore. The biggest difference between poor people, middle-class people, and wealthy people isn't income, it's how they think. And that's exactly where we're headed next. By now, we've talked about the slow lane, the fast lane, and the 5 commandments that help determine whether an opportunity can actually create wealth. But here's something even more important. Before people build wealth, they usually change the way they think. That's because money tends to amplify existing habits. If someone has poor financial habits, more money often creates bigger problems. If someone has strong financial habits, more money creates bigger opportunities. MJ DeMarco argues that one of the biggest differences between poor people, middle-class people, and wealthy people isn't intelligence, it isn't education, it isn't talent, it's perspective. They look at the same world differently, and those differences lead to very different outcomes. Let's start with how each group views money. Poor people focus on immediate survival. When someone is struggling financially, their attention naturally goes toward immediate needs, paying rent, buying groceries, covering bills, getting through the month. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's completely understandable. The challenge is that survival thinking often forces people to focus on short-term relief rather than long-term growth. Imagine someone receives an extra $1,000. A person trapped in survival mode may immediately spend it because there are urgent pressures everywhere. The money arrives and disappears. Nothing changes. The cycle continues. Again, this isn't about judgment, it's about understanding behavior. When you're constantly putting out fires, it's difficult to build something bigger. The future becomes less important than today, and that's exactly what keeps many people stuck. The middle class focuses on comfort. The middle class usually earns more money and has greater stability. But according to DeMarco, many middle-class people fall into a different trap: comfort. Their primary goal becomes improving lifestyle: a nicer home, a newer car, better vacations, more conveniences, bigger monthly expenses. The pattern often looks like this: income rises, lifestyle rises. Income rises again, lifestyle rises again. Years pass, the person appears successful, but financially they're still dependent on their paycheck. If the income stops, the lifestyle becomes difficult to maintain. This is why some people earning 6 figures still feel financially trapped. They're making good money, but they haven't built enough assets. They've built expenses instead. From the outside, it looks like wealth. On the inside, it's often just a more expensive version of financial dependence. Wealthy people focus on ownership. This is where the mindset starts to shift dramatically. Wealthy people often look at money differently. Instead of asking, "What can I buy?" they ask, "What can I own?" Instead of immediately consuming income, they think about acquiring assets: businesses, investments, intellectual property, systems, products, real estate, things that have the potential to generate future income. This doesn't mean wealthy people never enjoy life. Of course they do. The difference is priority. Many wealthy individuals focus on building assets first and consuming later. They understand that assets can eventually pay for luxuries. The reverse is rarely true. A luxury car won't generate wealth. A productive asset might. This simple distinction creates enormous differences over time. Poor people see price, wealthy people see value. Here's another fascinating idea from the book. Most people are trained to look at price. Wealthy people often focus on value. Imagine two people looking at the same business course. The course costs $500. One person says, "That's expensive." The other asks, "Can this help me earn more than $500? Completely different mindset. The first person sees cost, the second sees potential return. The same principle applies everywhere: books, skills, tools, education, relationships, business opportunities. Wealth builders frequently evaluate investments based on potential outcomes rather than immediate expense. Of course, not every purchase is worthwhile, but constantly focusing only on price can prevent people from making investments that change their future. Poor people trade time, wealthy people build leverage. One of the strongest themes throughout the Millionaire Fastlane is leverage. Poor and middle-class thinking often revolves around earning more for each hour worked. Get a raise, work overtime, find a higher-paying job. There's nothing wrong with any of those, but wealthy thinking asks a different question. How can I create results that aren't limited by my personal hours? That's leverage. A software developer creates a product used by thousands. An author writes a book sold worldwide. An entrepreneur builds a company with employees. A creator produces content viewed millions of times. In each case, the effort reaches far beyond a single hour of labor. The impact becomes scalable, and scalable value often creates scalable income. Poor people avoid responsibility, wealthy people seek it. This point makes many people uncomfortable. When things go wrong, it's easy to blame circumstances: the economy, the government, the boss, the market, bad luck. And to be fair, external factors do matter. Life isn't always fair. Some people absolutely face greater obstacles than others, but wealthy people tend to focus on what they can control. They ask, "What can I do next? What can I improve? What lesson can I learn?" Responsibility can feel heavy, but it also creates power. Because if your actions influence your results, then changing your actions can improve your future. Victimhood removes power. Responsibility creates options. That's one reason successful entrepreneurs often embrace responsibility instead of running from it. Poor people want guarantees. Wealthy people accept uncertainty. Most people love certainty: a guaranteed paycheck, a guaranteed outcome, a guaranteed path. The problem is that extraordinary opportunities rarely come with guarantees. Starting a business has uncertainty. Launching a product has uncertainty. Investing has uncertainty. Creating something new has uncertainty. Many people wait until risk disappears. Unfortunately, by the time risk disappears, the opportunity often disappears too. Wealthy people aren't fearless. They simply understand that uncertainty is part of growth. They calculate risks, they manage risks, but they don't spend their lives hiding from them. The biggest difference of all. If there is one lesson that stands above everything else in this chapter, it's this: wealthy people think like owners. Most people think like consumers. Consumers ask, "What can money buy?" Owners ask, "What can money build?" Consumers focus on spending. Owners focus on creating. Consumers focus on today. Owners focus on the future. Consumers look for entertainment. Owners look for opportunity. Over time, those small differences compound. One decision doesn't change a life. Thousands of decisions do. And that's why two people with similar backgrounds can end up in completely different financial situations 20 years later. not because one was lucky and the other wasn't, but because they repeatedly viewed opportunities, money, risk, and value through different lenses. This is the mindset shift MJ DeMarco wants readers to make, because once you stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like an owner, the world begins to look completely different. Problems become opportunities, expenses become investments, work becomes value creation, and money becomes a tool instead of a destination. The final piece of the puzzle is learning how to actually start building your own fast lane vehicle. Not someday, not after retirement, not when conditions are perfect, but starting from where you are right now. That's exactly what we'll cover in the final part. So far, we've talked about why most people stay stuck in the slow lane, what the fast lane actually is, the 5 commandments, and the mindset differences between consumers and owners. Now comes the question that matters most. What do you do with all this information? Because reading about wealth and building wealth are 2 very different things. You can finish 10 business books, watch 100 motivational videos, listen to every finance podcast on the internet, and still end up exactly where you started. Knowledge only becomes valuable when it turns into action. That's the final message of the Millionaire Fastlane. The goal isn't to admire the fast lane. The goal is to get on it. And surprisingly, the journey usually starts much smaller than people imagine. Stop looking for the perfect idea. One of the biggest mistakes beginners make is obsessing over finding the perfect business idea. They think successful entrepreneurs woke up one morning with a brilliant plan, then everything magically worked out. Reality is usually much messier. Most successful businesses didn't start as perfect ideas. They started as imperfect solutions, small solutions, simple solutions, sometimes even accidental solutions. People identify a problem. They create something useful. Customers respond. The solution improves. The business grows. That's how it often happens. The problem is that many people spend years searching for the perfect opportunity while doing absolutely nothing. They keep waiting, waiting for confidence, waiting for certainty, waiting for inspiration. Meanwhile, people with less knowledge but more action move ahead. Remember this: you don't need the perfect idea. You need a real problem worth solving. That's enough to begin. Learn valuable skills. DeMarco repeatedly emphasizes value creation, and value creation requires skills. The marketplace rewards people who can solve problems. The bigger the problem, the greater the reward often becomes. Think about some of the highest demand skills today: sales, marketing, copywriting, software development, content creation, product design, leadership, negotiation, communication. These skills help businesses grow, and businesses pay for growth. Many people focus entirely on earning credentials. Fast laners focus on becoming useful. The more useful you become, the more opportunities appear. Skills create leverage. Skills create options. Skills create confidence. Even if your first business fails, valuable skills remain. Nobody can take them away from you. Start thinking like a problem solver. Most people go through life complaining about problems. Traffic is terrible. Customer service is terrible. This software is terrible. That process is inefficient. The fast lane mindset flips the script. Instead of complaining, ask, why does this problem exist? Can it be solved better? Would people pay for a better solution? Every successful company exists because something wasn't working well enough. Every major innovation started with frustration. Every thriving business solves a problem. The bigger your awareness of problems, the bigger your opportunity pool becomes. This is why entrepreneurs often notice opportunities that other people ignore. They're looking through a different lens. While everyone else sees inconvenience, they see demand. Build assets, not just income. This might be the most important practical lesson in the entire book. Most people focus exclusively on income. They ask, how can I earn more money? Fastlaners ask, what can I build? There's a huge difference. Income is what you earn. Assets are what continue producing value. A business can be an asset. A website can be an asset. A software platform can be an asset. A book can be an asset. Intellectual property can be an asset. Investments can be assets. Assets work for you long after the original effort is completed. That's why wealthy people often prioritize ownership. Ownership creates leverage. Leverage creates scale. Scale creates opportunity. The objective isn't simply to make money, it's to create something that keeps generating value. Accept failure as part of the process. This is where many dreams die. People fail once, then they quit. A product doesn't sell, a business struggles, an idea falls apart, and they conclude, I guess I'm not cut out for this. But failure isn't proof that you're incapable, it's proof that you're learning. Think about every successful entrepreneur you've heard of. Behind the headlines are usually years of mistakes, failed projects, bad decisions, wrong assumptions, financial setbacks, rejections. The public sees success, they rarely see the learning process that came before it. DeMarco's point isn't that failure feels good. It doesn't. Failure can be painful, embarrassing, expensive, but it's often part of building something meaningful. The people who eventually win aren't always the smartest. They're often the ones who refuse to stop learning. Time is your most valuable asset. Most people spend their lives chasing money. DeMarco argues that money isn't the ultimate goal. Time is. Think about it. Why do people want financial freedom? Why do they want wealth? Why do they want successful businesses? Usually because they want more control over their lives, more freedom, more choices, more experiences, more time with family, more time doing meaningful work. Money is simply a tool that can help create those things. The tragedy is that many people sacrifice all their time chasing money and never achieve the freedom they were actually seeking. The Fastlane approach tries to reverse that. It focuses on creating systems that eventually buy back your time, because unlike money, time can never be replaced. Once it's gone forever. The real lesson of the Millionaire Fastlane. At its core, this book isn't really about becoming a millionaire. It's about challenging assumptions, questioning the financial rules most people accept without thinking, understanding that hard work alone isn't enough, understanding that income and wealth are not the same thing, understanding that value creation matters more than effort, understanding that ownership creates opportunities labor alone cannot. Most importantly, it's about realizing that financial freedom is not something that magically happens after 40 years of waiting. It's something intentionally built, step by step, skill by skill, problem by problem, asset by asset. MJ DeMarco isn't promising an easy road. The fast lane can be difficult. It requires responsibility, risk, learning, persistence. But it also offers something the slow lane rarely does, the possibility of freedom on your own terms. And that's why the Millionaire Fastlane continues to resonate with entrepreneurs, creators, and ambitious people around the world. Because whether you agree with every idea in the book or not, it forces you to ask a powerful question. Are you spending your life building someone else's dream, or are you building a vehicle that can eventually take you wherever you want to go? And sometimes asking the right question is the first step towards changing your entire future.